Okay, I'm gonna start off by answering a question that we actually got this morning, and we get asked a lot. Which is more appropriate, 504 or IEP for children with Tourette syndrome? Well, you're thanking me, but you might not like my answer because I'm going to say it depends. Just as everything with Tourette syndrome, we know that kids are very, very different. The students have very, very different needs. So it depends. Do they need special education services? Do they need modifications and accommodations? We look at what's the most interfering. Is it the tics? Is it OCD? Is it sensory issues? Is it learning disabilities? Is it something that accommodations and modifications can provide the correct services for? Is it something that special education is required? And I'll give some examples in just a minute. We need to be curious and creative with these kids because there is no standard answer. I know that on our website, or on our PowerPoint, it says that kids with Tourette syndrome typically don't do well in cafeterias. Well, I had a school call me, and they said, it says on your website that kids with Tourette syndrome shouldn't eat lunch in the cafeteria, so we're making this child not eat lunch in the cafeteria. And I said, well, what's good for one kid isn't necessarily good for all kids. This kid was pretty traumatized that they weren't allowing him to eat in the cafeteria. He was a very social butterfly and did very well in the cafeteria and enjoyed being there. So we do have to be careful, and we really need to be, it needs to be individualized. Important. Every child is different. When Matt first started out with an IEP, it was in 3rd grade, and what he needed at that point was a scribe. You heard all morning handwriting issues. My son's handwriting, he's a very bright kid, but he was doing very bad because of his handwriting. So he did have a scribe. He also had on his IEP that he be able to sit next to the windows, even though he has attention deficit, and that was difficult, but he needed to sit next to windows because he had phobias with germs. And he felt that if he sat next to windows, that he would have fresh air. At home, my husband's germs were the worst. They were toxic. So at home, he would run from window to window to window, taking in breaths of clean air. It made my husband feel really swell. But you know, I recently heard somebody quote, and I wish I knew who said it because it's a wonderful quote, and particularly for kids with Tourette syndrome, that intelligence can disguise disabilities. Disabilities can disguise intelligence. I Googled it trying to find out who said this. If you ever know who said it, please let me know because I'm going to use it a lot and I'd like to give credit. It is so true for kids with Tourette syndrome. A lot of kids with Tourette are very capable, very bright, and get excellent grades in elementary school until they get to about the 4th grade. And in 4th grade, we start with more handwriting. We start with longer questions. We start with more processing, more complex, more difficulties, more stress, more anxiety, more symptoms. So lots of times the grades start plummeting when you get to middle school. And the kids are very used to getting all A's, and now they start getting B's and C's and D's and even some F's. So we start seeing the grades go down, we start seeing the self-esteem go down, and we start hearing people say, well, we know he can do it, we know he's capable of doing it, but he's either lazy or he's being defiant, rather than really being curious. And what we need to do is be very, very curious about what's going on, what's happening with this kid.
In my 35-year career, I came across very few lazy kids. It's exactly what Kathy's saying. What's the real issue? It used to make me absolutely insane, Kathy, when a teacher would say, this kid's just lazy. No, there's very, very few kids who don't want to succeed. Yes, occasionally there would be a kid like that, but most of the kids want to be successful for themselves, for their parents, to keep up with their peers. Be very, very careful about people who say a child is lazy.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I had a teacher tell me one time that a second grader was lazy. Can you imagine being a second grader being lazy? One of my heroes is Dr. Ross Green, and he says all children will be successful if they can. And if they can, it's up to us to figure out why. And I believe that to my toes. So we need to provide 504. We need to provide supports, either through a 504 or an IEP. 504s can provide testing accommodations, homework modifications. When they get into middle school, possibly they do need more supports. When we start seeing the grades fall, that's when we need to start paying attention. There's an old adage that says, in order to be successful, we must work hard. Well, for kids with Tourette syndrome, lots of times that's turned around. And in order to work hard, for a lot of kids that have been having failure, they first must have some success. Because they get trapped in this cycle of failure, and they get so deep in the well of failure, they can't see the light of success, and they give up. And we're losing very bright, brilliant children, talented children that have given up. And then we start punishing because they're not doing their work. So instead, we truly need to look at what's going on. We need to look at the children in elementary school, even when they are getting good grades, finding out what are their strengths. What are their deficits? Because their deficits, like I said, they might not be showing up because they're so incredibly bright that it's masking their deficits. But the deficits are going to show up later on. And if we can give some modifications early on, teaching the kids to use the computer, keyboarding skills. You know, it used to be more of an issue when I first started doing this, because now everybody works on the computer. But as early as you can, get the keyboarding skills up, because that is going to be so incredibly important for the children. Some of the typical 504 accommodations, like Ellen talked about this morning, computer, extended time, separate location, copy of notes, and chewing gum. Chewing gum and doodling can help children with attention deficit focus, because it actually stimulates their brain so that they can focus. I'm a doodler. If I'm in a staff meeting and I'm not doodling, I'm not listening. So allowing the kids to doodle. I remember on one little girl's 504 plan, they had that she could never sit next to the source of heat because heat made her symptoms increase significantly. When she became overheated, her symptoms went through the roof. So on her 504, she had to be seated away from any source of heat. So be creative. Some of the accommodations, some of the special education services that might be needed under an IEP for children with Tourette syndrome. And again, these are typical. All the kids are different. The classroom paraprofessional and aide can be extremely helpful. Another hand for the teacher. And I'm sure a lot of teachers here would agree with that one. Yeah, if you can get them. I hear you. But they can scribe for the child. They can help the child be organized. If the child needs to go for a walk, especially in elementary, there's somebody that can accompany the child. As the children get older, resource and consultant teachers are extraordinarily, I want every kid that has Tourette to have access to consultant and resource room teacher, particularly the kids with the executive functioning. I have found that the executive functioning is one of the main issues for kids with Tourette syndrome. Lots of times counseling, speech, like Ellen was saying, for the pragmatic language. My son one time came home from school, and I got a call from the teacher that the whole afternoon was gone because one of the teachers said, now I'm climbing out on a limb here. And my son wondered all day long why this teacher was going to go outside and climb a tree and climb out on a limb. So helping with the pragmatic language can be helpful. And the social skills as well. IEPs and 504 also provide protection. They provide protection for children whose behaviors are misunderstood. And if they break the school's code of conduct, having an IEP or a 504, or even being suggested as teachers, all you have to do is suggest to a principal that this child might need an IEP and a 504, and then they are automatically protected under IDEA and will have manifestation protections. I'm one of those geeks that like laws. I read education law when I go to bed at night, so I am a geek.
That's scary.
Oh, but it's so interesting. So anyways, I'm going to share with you some really fascinating information from this wonderful piece of literature. It's the 2008 Amendments to the Americans with Disabilities Act. Yes. It'll be quick. And it's interesting, I guarantee. The amendments have made it easier for children to be eligible for 504 plans. And some of the things that they have added, the first one is that they are saying that now symptoms may be episodic. Boy, Tourette Syndrome and episodic, that's it. The second one is they have added examples of how a student could be eligible for 504 plans and what major life activities. And some of the life activities that they included was reading. Is reading limited? Well, if you're eye blinking, if you're shoulder shrugging, if you're head jerking, I mean, reading can be impacted for kids with Tourette's in numerous ways. Another one that they added to the list was communicating. How do we communicate? Speaking and writing. Two major Tourette issues. They also included concentrating, which I find amazing that they did this. Obsessive thoughts, attention distractions, and trying to suppress can really interfere with concentrating. So, as I said before, be creative, think outside the box, look at the individual, do your homework. Does this child need a few 504 accommodations? Do they need IEP supports? It really depends. The most important things that you can provide for a child is an environment of acceptance, a safe place to learn strategies on how to manage their disabilities, promote success, and as Ellen said, a structured environment with flexibility.